So now that we've learned all about the unit circle, we're going to use that unit circle knowledge to find some trig, to solve some trig problems. So if I was asked to find the secant of 13 pi over 4, the first thing I'm going to want to do is change this to degrees. So if I have 13 pi over 4 and I want to change that to degrees, remember 13 pi over 4 is in radians, so I have to multiply by 180 degrees over pi radians. So my radians can cancel out, even my pi cancels out, and I end up doing the math. I get 13 times 180. Whoa, I get 2,340 over 4, multiply straight across, divide that by 4, and I get 585 degrees. Where is 585 degrees? Let's think about this on a unit circle. Okay, if I go one revolution, I'm at 360. I started at 0. Then if I go all the way around, I'm at 360. I go another 90. I'll be at 360. I go another 90. I'm at 450. If I go another 90, I'll be at 540. I'm trying to get to 585. So 585, if I go another 90, that's gone too far. So I know my reference angle of 585 is right in here, in the third quadrant. So, but really, what angle does that actually make? Well, if I take 585 and I subtract that from the x-axis here would be 540, I get a 45-degree reference angle. And I draw my triangle, and I know 45, 45, 90, now it's very familiar to me. I have the hypotenuse, remember, is 1, and the legs are square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. So now remember, now I have to find the secant. So I think to my SOHCAHTOA. And I know the reciprocal of sine is cosecant, and the reciprocal of cosine is secant. That's the one I want. And the reciprocal of tangent is cotangent. So I'm taking the reciprocal of cosine, which will be hypotenuse over adjacent. So we get the secant of our angle will be hypotenuse over adjacent. And in this case, I want the secant of 45 degrees, which is going to be the hypotenuse 1 over adjacent side, square root of 2 over 2. 1 divided by square root of 2 over 2. So let's look at that another way. 1 divided by square root of 2 over 2. How do I deal with a fraction when I'm dividing? I take the reciprocal and I turn it to multiplication. So that gives me 2 over square root of 2. But the problem is I cannot keep square root of, sorry, you can't see that, square root of 2 in the denominator. That's a problem. So what I have to do with that is multiply by by the same thing so that I can what's called rationalize the denominator. And when I multiply by the number, because square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2 reduces to the number 1. 1 times anything does not change that value. So I can do that to rationalize the denominator. Square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is just 2. 2 times square root of 2 is 2 square roots of 2. And I just reduce it. These are both outside the radical, so 2 over 2 reduces to 1. It leaves me just with the square root of 2. But now I have to remember, the last thing I need to remember is that all students take calculus. What quadrant was I in? Over here I'm in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant, the only thing that is positive is tangent and cotangent. So I have to put a negative on my final answer. And so the answer to secant of 13 pi over 4 would be negative square roots of 2. And there's my first example. We'll go for another example. Let's do another example here. let's find the tangent of negative 210 degrees. So remember, if it's negative, I think about where's my reference angle going to be. If I have my initial side here, my terminal side is going to be going clockwise. This will be negative 90, negative 180. Negative 210 is going to be right up in the second quadrant. So negative 210. We're going to figure out what is that reference angle going to be. Well, if this was the negative 180 and this is 210, we'll take the difference and we get 30 degrees. 30 degrees. And if I have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, I know my hypotenuse is a 1. Across from 30 degrees is 1/2. And across from 60 degrees is square root of 3 over 2. I know my 30, 60, 90 triangle. So I want the tangent. Remember, SOHCAHTOA. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So opposite, so tangent of this angle, opposite is 1/2. Divided by adjacent, opposite over adjacent. Adjacent is square root of 3 over 2. But remember, when we divide fractions, I end up by multiplying by its reciprocal. And when I do this, I get 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times square root of 3 is 2 square roots of 3. The 2's cancel and leaves me with 1 over the square root of 3. But again, I cannot have a square root in the denominator, so I have to multiply through by I have to rationalize the denominator. To rationalize the denominator, you multiply by what's already in the denominator. That reduces to 1. 1 times anything doesn't change the value, so I get 1 times the square root of 3, which is just the square root of 3, over square root of 3 times square root of 3 is the square root of 9. The square root of 9 is just 3. Now I have to think, is my answer positive or negative? All students take calculus. I'm in the second quadrant. The only thing positive in the second quadrant is sine. And I'm taking the tangent though, so therefore this will be negative. And there's my answer.